Good morning, everybody. Happy Wednesday. It is February 11th, and I am here live with Mr. Al Solis. He's taking the call from his truck, so I apologize for being a couple of minutes behind. But of course, our material and discussion is not behind, and we are ready to set this off. For those that don't know Mr. Al Solis, he is the executive for NHCA, so the National Construction Hispanic Association of California. He's also a contractor, so if you are in the public works, he is out there hustling, bussing, and a lot of people might know him through networking events. So I'm going to let Mr. Al Solis introduce himself to you.
Good morning, everybody. And for those who are not in this time zone, good afternoon. My name is Al Solis. I'm, like Rocio said, I'm the executive director of the National Hispanic Construction Association of California. I am incredibly pleased to have this opportunity to speak to our brothers and sisters out there in the small business community who have uh, taken on an incredible task of being part of infrastructure industry and and seeking out opportunities to make your companies more viable and more profitable in the industry. Unfortunately, due to many changes um, from this current administration, we've we've suffered a few setbacks. One being the DBE program and its demise, and changes that are going to come to it, whether you accept them to be good or bad. They're changes that have to take place and enable us to have to pivot. And so during these times of change, how do we find better opportunities? How do we continue to stay viable? How do we continue to maintain our doors open? And how do we navigate these trying times in this industry? And that's what we're here to speak about. And like I said, I appreciate Rocio for giving us this opportunity, and I look forward to sharing things that worked for me. Not only am I the executive director, but I'm also a contractor, and so I speak to you firsthand as an individual that's out there on a day-to-day basis, trying to win opportunities for our company so that we can maintain relevance in this industry. So thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope that even a little bit of what we speak about today can give you an opportunity to continue to continue to maintain your doors open in such a trying time.
Thank you, Al. So let's dive into what obstacle do you see out there that small contractors are currently facing?
Well, one of the largest obstacles that we're faced with is lack of opportunity. Um, with many opportunities that had taken place in the past, we unfortunately had to be reliant on either GCs or tier ones giving these presenting these opportunities so that we could fit in to what I felt was a little bit of an unfairness to fit into a project that's already been awarded and won, and the price had been set. Um, Coming in after the fact made for huge challenges, um, especially when, Rocio, as you know, even in an insurance and a workers' comp situation, us smaller businesses, we are faced with the challenge of working under larger expenses. And a lot of that expenses are insurance and workers' comp and a lot of those necessary uh, um, administrative costs that we require to be viable on a project. So that itself created an issue where there was a huge disparity in cost. Cost is something that a lot of these projects are driven by, and we understand that at the end of the day, public work is based on cost. So how can we come in after the fact and fit into a cost that's already been established without having us as a consideration? One of the things that I always say when a project is awarded for $1 billion and there's a 20% inclusion before, and no longer the case right now, did that GC really win an opportunity for $1 billion or 800 million? And when they're bidding it, they have to bid it as if they're winning the whole thing because, as I said, we become, in all intents and purposes, an afterthought of where we fit in. And so those are challenges that we face, that we faced in the past. But now it's even worse because those inclusion opportunities aren't even included anymore due to the current state of the DBE or the non-DBE opportunities that are afforded to us.
Yeah. And what do you, I mean, what do you small contractors do at this point, right? If they're being now, their scope of work is, or like the opportunities now being reduced.
Well, I'm a contractor that's based out of Los Angeles, and right now I'm doing this from my truck. Well, most of the time when I do take any kind of calls, I'm doing it in my truck because this is my office, this is my home. And as a contractor, I have to be out there, whether I'm, following up on jobs or following up on current day-to-day operations. I have to be out there, to make certain that we're meeting the needs of that delivery and my employees are fulfilling their responsibilities. So I find myself that way. But most importantly, what I think that I've had to do is, one, be a lot more involved when it comes to costs and operations, but also have to go outside my comfort area. Where, like I said, a lot of opportunities that were in the LA area, now I find myself right now in the middle of the Victorville area, seeking an opportunity in this public works arena, where normally I wouldn't because the work was such abundantly available in the LA area. And now, that's one of the things I've taken on. Now, as a business owner, I have to make a determination if those things are worth my while. And it's not just a financial decision, but does it create capacity and capability building on my part? And the reason why I elected to take this opportunity away from where my comfort zone is because I hope that after delivering this project, I've increased my capacity. I've done some growth, and I've increased my capabilities to be able to be down to my area where I'm comfortable in and be a lot more competitive. And that is something that we have to look at as small businesses. And it's a business decision at the end of the day, but are they the smart business decisions? And only you know exactly where that lies in your day-to-day operations. So yes, that's been one of the things that I've decided to do, is to kind of increase my footprint and pursue lower hanging fruit, if you will. As some of these larger companies fight for opportunities in the more comfortable areas, I think it leaves a desired need in some of the more rural areas of Southern California.
Yeah. I feel like that's all across construction right now, especially when it comes to the private world. I feel like the private world got impacted 2 years ago with with a slowdown on, buildings, apartments, and I know a lot of people definitely are looking opportunities, that are counties away, 2 hour drives and so forth.
Well, that's kind of funny that you mentioned that because the private sector is somewhere else where I've decided to put a focus on, and private improvements, whether it be on the commercial side, residential, or even in the retail side, has shown a great increase. Um, as you find, you know, cutbacks in labor, you need I think the commercial and specifically the retail needs to raise their visibility. So how do you raise your visibility? By having improvements in stores and retail and locations of that nature so that you can attract the consumer. And so that's a place where I've also kind of put a focus on is on the private improvement side of construction, tenant improvements, existing improvements, and even new construction on some of the retail is can be beneficial to us as small businesses. Now, the scopes in itself are smaller, so what does that mean? The costs are a little bit more manageable. But you do find yourself being incredibly having to be incredibly competitive, but opportunities are more abundant. So that's exactly how I think that another way of doing that. And same thing, getting out of the city and pursuing these opportunities. Especially off of traveled highways. Where it's a road that goes to a destination place. Well, you see a lot of development, whether it be McDonald's or Starbucks or fast food places being built in locations that take you to a destination because they're trying to take advantage of those travelers and those commuters to capitalize on those dollars. And so that's also an interesting point that you make because that's exactly what we're faced with in making decisions personally for myself. It doesn't necessarily all the decisions I make are important, but we're giving you ideas and thoughts of how you can improve and continue to stay viable in this at this time in our industry.
Yeah, I mean, by just making that change, you're shifting from prevailing wages to less, to a normal wages, and we all know in prevailing wages, like it's a lot more. So how are you managing that with the employees, or if you have if you have a group set of men, because obviously they're used to their benefits and a certain wage amount, now moving over to the private side or possibly the private side?
Well, Rocio, that's funny that you say that because the reality is that that's the one thing I don't do. I I don't I don't cheapen my labor, and again, those are business decisions we have to make. Not all opportunities are great opportunities, and if you're compromising the delivery for salaries, then maybe it's not the best situation for you. Look, I'm very upfront, and I make this something that I live off of, is that I'm not going to be the cheapest, and I'm not trying to be the cheapest, but I'm not trying to be the most expensive. And part of that, I understand that my labor and my performance shouldn't dictate, my cost. My cost is important. My workforce is important, and I can't ask my workforce to take a cut in pay because of an opportunity that I'm pursuing. The reality is that right now, with such a demised workforce, it's important for us to maintain our workforce and continue to make certain that they're receiving salaries that are acceptable. So prevailing wage may not be prevailing wage, but it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm not going to pay my guys accordingly. I can't ask a man to come, that's been working at a prevailing wage opportunity all his life or most of part of his life, and then all of a sudden ask him to take a pay cut in 10, 15, 20, 30%. It won't do that. So I have to find the right situation that allows my workforce to be valued when taking on a project. So that's all part of the pursuit, the pursuit. So
Yeah. Aaron gives you Aaron Valverde gives you a thumbs up for that. Hi, Aaron.
and
Thank you for tuning
and you
in.
got to understand that, that they're out there. Those opportunities are out there. You just need to, maybe tighten up your overhead in order to maintain that. Because at the end of the day, you're only as good as the last job you do, and that's the sounding board. The last job you did, that's the barometer that's set, and we set that as contractors. So let's be good at our last job, so that continues to play out and create a pipeline that allows us to be productive and allows us to have opportunity that continues on through the year.
Yes. And then Moises, that Carmen gives you a hands up for that too. So thank you, Moises, for tuning in.
I was reading something where a lot of our workforce gets feels like they get the shaft when it comes to existence. And the reality is, how long have your men been working for you, or women? And that's a test of time. That's a test a testament unto how good of a boss you are, or how good of a company you are. If you got a constant turnover, then that just shows you, are you really taking care of your workforce? Do you really take them into consideration? And that's part of why we try to maintain a workforce that's been with us for a very long time. Prior to having my own company, I was working for other couple of companies, and I was their BD director of operations, director of operations, and I was in charge of pursuits. And from the time that I started, I've had men that have followed me everywhere I've gone, and I've been very fortunate. And sometimes it's something as simple as my child has a play at 3:00, or and there's no way I'm gonna be off of work at 3 and make it to their school. 2 hours, you give that person 2 hours, they're going to give you 40 better hours that following week, because you show consideration for your workforce. And as I'm out here, and one of my main employees, he lives in Santa Clarita, and when I told him I was pursuing an opportunity up here, he says, "I don't care, boss. I'll go wherever you tell me to go." Who does that? Well, who does that are individuals that you take the time to care for. And if you care for your employees, they will pay you back 10 times over. So that's important to understand. Is the decisions that we make are not only important for our businesses, but for the people that work for us. And we have to always have that in our mind. You don't let the patients run the insane asylum, but you also have to take consideration for those patients, so that you have a sane asylum.
Yes. And then we have a question from Eddie G. Alves. What about the relationship building with the GCs?
Look, the reality is that the relationship building with the GCs are great, but who are you choosing to have those relationships that you build with? Whom? Is it, and I'm going to be point blank, is it the MBE, the Small Business Diversity Manager? Is it the woman that answers the phone? I don't know. You need to make a calculated decision on whom you seek and who you pursue the relationships with. Because the reality is, some people just don't make decisions, and some people don't even get to hear about you and don't know your narrative. So not only should you have to build a relationship with the right people, but you need to share your narrative with the right people. You need to be able to have the right people listen to the relevant experience that you have and what you bring to the table. So for me, um, continually to look and look and look for the right individuals, and you'll know, because you'll know the results. You'll see the results. And look, the reality is all GCs go out there and they put on a great show, and they tell you come and listen, but we don't understand that that's part of their responsibility. When they win an opportunity, that's what they've been tasked to do. It doesn't necessarily mean that they have to hire you, because all they have to do is provide a platform for you to come. It's your responsibility whether you get hired or not. So how do you do that? By finding the right individuals that make the decisions and that your words will resonate with. That's the key to it. And at the end of the day, remember this: they do not need you. You need them. So always have that mentality. I don't care how many certifications you have, it doesn't mean squat. It does not mean squat if you don't know how to market and sell yourself and put yourself in the right position. Please keep that in mind. You don't need you. As a matter of fact, they can succeed more without you than with you. But the key is, how do I make myself valuable so that we can succeed together? That's the key.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. But I'm gonna hit you right now with question that in regards to public works and marketing. Yeah, I'm gonna focus on the marketing aspect. So what I hear in construction, what makes public works and private different is the marketing aspect, right? Because on private, there's more. I mean, let's go with residential. There's more marketing upfront, and on the public works, it's all based on your estimate and bid, right? The lowest bid usually wins. So how can someone on the public side, I guess, increase or use their marketing skills? I always hear like, well, I mean, I actually know a lot of successful companies that don't do any marketing, but they run a successful business.
Well, marketing on the public side really doesn't have as much. It doesn't catapult you into any better situation than that. And let me start by disagreeing that price is not always the factor. You don't necessarily have to be the cheapest in order to get an opportunity, even on the public side, because there's been but what is the value that you bring to a situation? What is your added value? That's what's more important on the public side than anything else, because we've seen many opportunities that don't go to the lowest bidders. It's what the value they brought. So you have to take a bit of that.
Valuable can how valuable can I be to this project? How valuable can I be to that tier one? How valuable can I be to that GC? And so the marketing is not the important thing. It's the individuals that's your marketing, the relationships and your relevant and past experience. That's your marketing. They want to know, have you ever been in a situation where you've had to pave or done curb and gutters and sidewalks and things of that nature, and how successful were you? Ergo, the last job I did. You see what I'm saying? So it's all tied in together. You yourself and your relevant experience and your past experience, that's your marketing. And it's funny because people don't realize that you can't get on a public job unless you've done public works before. Well, how in the hell do you do that? Again, controlling your narratives and understanding what you're doing and building that relationship with someone. There's somebody out there that's going to trust you. There's somebody out there that's going to give you a shot. but how prepared are you for that shot? And that's where it comes in. And it's almost like you got to stand on your own. You can't rely on a GC and you can't rely on tier one. You can only present to them the things that you've done and the things that you've accomplished. And sometimes, you know, we have to use some savviness to get those opportunities. And that's that's where you have to really understand what you're pursuing and what you're doing. Again, don't rely on your certification and don't rely on your skin color or your genderness. Just rely on the fact that you can perform. And by the way, I happen to be this, or by the way, I happen to be here. You go, that's a second afterthought. The reality is stay focused, because especially with this, like I said, in this recent administration, we still got a couple of years left on this before it changes. And for me, that's been the huge, that's going to be a huge challenge for a lot of people who are going to drop out of these programs and these opportunities because of the challenges that we're going to be faced with.
And do you want to elaborate more for those people that may not know what the challenges are?
I'm sorry, my phone. Hold on. Repeat the question.
I said, do you want to discuss what those challenges are for those that may not know those challenges? Because we also have people that are not involved in the construction side.
Hold on. I'm reconnecting. I'm having a problem here connecting. Forgive me, guys. I apologize for, but at least you know that I'm not sitting in an office.
They probably disconnected from people.
Oh, Jesus. Can you guys hear me now? Can you hear me now?
I can hear you. Yeah, I can hear you.
Hold on.
Well, I wait for Mr. Al to come back into the chat. There's been a lot of issues with labor costs,
I'm sorry,
material costs going up. Hi, Al.
Rocio, I apologize. I just missed quite a bit of all that, and I'm sorry about that, everybody. What I was saying was, at least you
No,
guys
don't
know
worry.
that
I was just talking over while we were waiting.
and what I was saying is, at least you guys know that I'm talking for real, and I'm talking from the field. I'm not sitting in an office trying to tell you how to live or how to, what to do without me being the one that's actually doing it. So thank you so much for being so patient and dealing with my true technical difficulties. Yeah.
Yeah, don't worry about it. So we left off where you said there's some challenges that people are facing that are, this we still have some years to go, and you said there were some challenges, and I asked you if you could talk about those challenges because we have viewers here who are not involved in the construction. They're kind of on the insurance and vendor side. So what challenges were you talking about?
So opportunity is probably one of the biggest challenges. And so one of the things that I'm doing as NHCA is I'm right now with the federal money having difficulties, and with the recertification of the DBE program, it's still kind of in the balance and looking where it's going. Please, first of all, let me address that first and kind of jump a little bit to something before that. A big challenge is our certifications, and will those opportunities return as we knew them? And it's hard to say right now. Right now, California and the unification certification program has really taken their time to research, to recertify and write new guidelines, because they're trying to create a defensible program that, if challenged, can withstand any challenges on the court level. Now, you got to remember, the reason why the demise of this DBE program took place is because it was challenged in two locations. It was challenged in Eastern Kentucky, and it was also challenged in Indiana. And that was a company that came and presented a lawsuit claiming that the DBE program was constitutionally incorrect because it identified gender and it identified, racial guidelines. So, unfortunately, because of where those were filed in those states, I think they land and it created precedents. So now the precedence has been set. Now, what was great about it is that the DBE program itself was not found to be unconstitutional, but the guidelines were. So now, with that being said, California, which is a Democratic state, and we all understand that, has a huge target on its back. So they want to make sure that they create a program where we can have inclusion without excluding others. So that's the challenge, the largest challenge. In the meantime, what that does, it lends itself to the states, because the states have inclusion programs. So a big part that what I'm trying to do as executive director is I'm pushing for the local agencies like Metro, which they have a great program already in place that creates a small business set aside, which allows for projects $5 million and below, and allows for small businesses. Doesn't necessarily have to be woman owned or Hispanic or whatever. Just small businesses come in and create opportunities within that. The challenge there is taking some of these billion-dollar projects and removing portions and carving them out so that we could, one, learn how to become independent and become good businesses that allow us to have a better understanding from day-to-day operations and give us a better understanding of how to deliver our project appropriately. To allow us to work as our own contractors and allow us not to have to need support from GCs or tier ones to deliver these opportunities, so we can win them ourselves. And so what I'm trying to do is hope that there's many more agencies like Metro that create these small business set-asides and then create the opportunities within those agencies to put those out for us to be able to be competitive. And it's okay if we're competitive amongst each other, but it's not okay if all of a sudden now we're at a federal project that's requiring small business participation, but I got to compete with a Griffith, or I got to compete with a Doty Brothers, or I have to compete with a WA Rassick, or I have to compete with these bigger tier ones that there is no way I can compete with, because they operate completely different than the way a small business does. And so how do we figure out the workers' comp portion? How do we figure out the insurance parts of it? And that's where you've always been incredibly helpful, Rocio, to help us with those things and how we can lower our EMRs or get an EMR. Because a lot of times as small businesses, we're not required to have an EMR. But when we do get into these positions where these carving out situations, we are going to need an EMR. We are going to need bonding insurance. We are going to need to find ways to make ourselves viable for that opportunity. So that's capacity building. And how do we do that? And we do have to do that by providing better understanding and providing those those avenues to our small business community to do so.
Yeah. I mean, when it comes to compliance requirements and all of that, I would assume you would abide by the rules, which is everybody has, carry their own bond, their own insurance, and all of that, just because the risk is the same, right? You're going to do the same work as anyone else. And if you make a mistake, don't complete it, you're liable for it. But to your point, saying that you're competing with, these large businesses, I'm just asking because obviously I don't bid, I don't go into, Planet Bids or see any of that. But are these larger companies? Are you saying like you guys are? Because I would assume that these large companies don't bid on the smaller jobs as the smaller guys because obviously like it's just too small for them.
It's funny that you mentioned that, Rocio, because what we do find ourselves is that larger companies are severing away from that and creating smaller companies, small businesses within their own companies to be able to compete with us, and that's always been a huge issue. So that's happening right now as larger companies. Remember, at the end of the day, they're about the final dollar. They're about their bottom line. So by creating smaller entities within that industry, they now can be competitive with us. And because they have that financial backing, it doesn't even create an equality. It doesn't create a platform that allows us all to compete at the same level. So that's why having these smaller opportunities for the small businesses is crucial, and there must be guidelines within that as well. But a lot of the larger companies are creating smaller companies so that they can maintain a revenue in that industry. So that's a big fear, and that's always been the issue, and that's why the SBE program the DBE program was created to allow there to be equality. Look, at the end of the day, back in the day when you could have a guy who had a wife or something like that, and even then that was a big fear that I'll put this company in my wife's name, and then I'll just say it's a woman-owned company, and all of a sudden, you fall under that DBE criteria. So, is there a way to deal with that? Unfortunately, that's a very difficult thing to prove, and that's a very difficult thing to contend with. But the reality is, you're going to contend with it. So find that right situation for you. So be picky, be choosy, and make certain that you understand what you're getting yourself into, especially when you're bidding. Bidding is something that large companies have staff that's all they do all day long. They have non-billable individuals, but with small companies, look at me. I'm over here. I deal with payroll. I deal with hours. I deal with, everything from equipment, material, and labor. And then at the same time, I'm seeking and pursuing and bidding opportunities. It's a lot of hats to wear. But so that's why we have to be picky and we have to understand what we're getting ourselves into. And once we win that job, that's a whole new other, conversation. How am I going to make certain that I deliver that with the cost and understand the changes that come through a job? Change orders are a big part of that. We leave so many dollars on the table because we don't know how to address change orders. And that's another conversation.
Well, let's talk about a little bit because everybody deals with change orders. I mean, everybody knows that construction never flows as the way it is, right? There's always construction is risk management itself, right? Because you are managing people, you're managing the schedule that they gave you, you're managing the general contractor. You're managing all these little things, and with that along, everybody knows that you are going to have hiccups around, along the way, and design and error issues. It's all the time. I mean, this is exactly why contractors and engineers are always like this. It's just the way it is.
Well,
so by saying change orders,
but you have to understand what's a billable change order and what's not.
Go ahead.
And not having that understanding is where we fall into a lot of trouble. So the document review in the beginning is so crucial to taking on an opportunity. Understand what's there, everything from a soils report to speculations of product. Those are all things that are so crucial to you to have a proper understanding and a proper bidding process. If they're telling you that you're going to need to have these steel beams, well, understand what kind of beam, understand what kind of makeup and composite of that mill cert that it should be, understand what those specs are on that beam, so that you're not finding a $50 beam, I'm just using that as a number, and really are required to put a $100 beam on there. That could just bust your whole cost. Now, if all of a sudden it's not being specific and you bring this and they say, no, we wanted this $100 beam, but it's not on your specs, that's a change order. So it's they say the devil is in the details. You have to understand the details. Details are so crucial to the proper delivery. And 9 out of 10 times it's in there, but we miss it. And then all of a sudden we want to claim a change order. Look, is it hard? Absolutely. And that's why we have to have, we don't want to just have a bunch of hats. We want to make sure all the hats that we have fit. You get me? And that's what makes it a very, very challenging thing to be a small business, because we don't have the staff and or the manpower to be able, in a lot of cases, to challenge, difficulties that come across in the field.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. So you make sure to keep record of that. But I also think that you guys also face the battle of, will this change order be approved? Because now that's a different bet between you and the GC. Because oftentimes what I've noticed from talking with contractors and clients myself is that they approve a change order verbally, but they never got it done through documentation. And then they sometimes end up doing the work, and the next thing you know, they don't end up getting paid because there was no documentation.
And I'm guilty of that. I am completely guilty of it. That's happened to me before, and it was incredibly costly. So no one is exempt from those challenges or those mishaps. Case in point, and with all fairness, I want everybody to know, because I want to disclose this. Rosillo's helped me with a lot of my insurance issues that I've had. And Rosillo, remember that opportunity I got at the airport? And it was just a little minor change in that phrase that we had to correct in order for me to get insured and be able to be on that project. So there's challenges in every aspect of a project. It could be from your administrative side to the operation side to the labor side. So, and those are, like I said, the devil is in those details, and we have to be aware of those details.
%. Then we had Tamika Watts over here saying documentation is key to everything. There they also commented saying true, and he was, pretty sure he was saying true to what we were just saying. But hey, Al, so we're almost close to the 55-minute mark. Is there anything else you would like to give to the audience before the call?
I want to encourage every DBE that is here on listening to this conversation. Do not give up on your recertification. It is so important. The DBE program was part of the 1965 civil rights movement, and the reality is that we cannot go back in time. The civil rights movement is what gave us opportunities to be, part of society, and gave us opportunity to create equality. And by you not certifying, we are setting back our society 30 years, 40 years back into the past, and we can't allow that to happen. You have to continue to fight for this program. You have to continue to be part of this, and then you have to be out there. I don't care if you don't come and join the fight with me, because I will be there whether you're there or not. But if you do, share with your politicians, share with your local politicians, and say, hey, we want small business programs. We need small business programs in whatever city that you are, so that we can continue to be independent, to continue to be sovereign business owners, and we can continue to have these opportunities fall on our laps, and fight for these opportunities that we are so deserving of. Look, if you want to work for big business, work for big business. But if you enjoy working for yourself, make certain that those opportunities are there for you and for all of us. Because at the end of the day, I'll be in that front line, I promise you, and with or without you, but I'd rather do it with you than without you. So that's all I can say. Thank you so much for allowing me to take 45 minutes of your life, and I can't thank you enough for the support you give me. If you're interested in being part of NHCA and what we are as a membership, I'm not going to invite you to a gala.
It was it's 55 minutes, but I do want to take the time to.
Thank you.
You're so funny.
Hello? Do I hang up?
No, I'm set up saying to take this time to thank our audience, our audience. We love comments. Obviously, we appreciate your support. And if there's any comments, this video will be available on LinkedIn, and it will also be uploaded on YouTube and shared on my other social media, so we can connect with contractors across the state and nation. So thank you so much for joining. I really appreciate your opinion and support, because obviously you are boots on the ground, and you've always been an advocate for smaller businesses. That's actually how we met. We met through a networking event that you first held back in, I don't know, 2-3 years ago. And from there, I got connected with other smaller businesses that all said, hey, when I was having this issue, Al went up there and advocated for me. Al was in the battlefield with me. He knows exactly what went on. And I appreciate him, because I know when he talks, he means it. So appreciate you. And also the fact pretty much died and came back alive. So, we're very grateful to have you here. And big shout out to San Antonio Hospital that helped get this man back on his feet. And I don't know your doctor's name, the man that saved you at the gym, but I also would like to give him a shout out.
Well, I'm going to be at San Antonio Hospital tomorrow, and I'm going to tell my story. It's Heart Week awareness, and I'm going to tell my story, and it'll be there between 5:30 and 7:30. We're going to try to go ahead and put a little bit online. But yes, I am more convinced in what my life is about today. And I know that my life is about fighting for others and making certain that opportunities are given to all of us. So thank you so much. And I love you all. Please visit me on my site. Reach out if you're not connected. I'd love to know more about you. Thank you all. Bye.
Awesome. Thank you guys. Bye.